It's Tottenham versus Aston Villa this weekend at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We're back after an international break, and here's your opposition preview for that game. I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by an opposition fan. In this case, Neil from For the Love of Paul McGrath. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm doing really, really good. I'm delighted to chat to you guys because I've just come back from being in one of the NFL games in the Tottenham Stadium, and I must say, what a stadium you guys have! Absolute pleasure to sit in. Great view, vantage points, and yeah, you guys are spoiled with that stadium for sure.
We certainly are. Thank you. It's very kind of you. Would you like to tell people, Neil, a bit about you and what you kind of do across social media?
Yeah, so obviously an Aston Villa podcast. It's we're based here in Ireland, where there's actually quite a big Aston Villa following. And as you may tell, my favourite Aston Villa player of all time is Paul McGrath. We call him God in Aston Villa circles. So instead of saying this phrase "for the love of God," I changed my podcast name to the "for the love of Paul McGrath" because it essentially means the same thing. But yeah, we're doing a podcast since about 2000 and think it's 2019, 18, 19, and yeah, as I say, it's been a buffer zone for me from when Father Time started to catch up with me and playing sports and playing Sunday league and everything, and you realize you can't go training 4 days a week and play a match on a Sunday, so got to fill your time, and what better way to do it than podcasting and talking about Aston Villa.
Exactly that. Do you know what? I love that. It's a great name. It's really creative, and I love that. So thank you, and appreciate you coming on today. Should be a good one. If you're listening on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. For listening after via audio or on a podcast platform, please do drop us a follow and a 5-star review. And by all means, let us know where you're listening from, what time of day it is too. Neil, let's start with a season review then with Aston Villa. So in the Premier League, you find yourself 13th place, 9 points from 7 games, -1 goal difference. You've won 2 games, you've drawn 3, and you've lost 2. Then in the Europa League, you sit in 3rd place in that new look, like kind of whole table. 2 wins from 2, so 6 out of 6 points, and a +3 goal difference. And then the Carabao Cup, you're knocked out in round 3 by Brentford, Keith Andrews Brentford, on penalties. So what are your thoughts so far? And would it be fair to say it was a slow start initially?
Yeah, so I think you'd be hard pushed to find any Aston Villa fan that will tell you that, yeah, we're exactly where we thought we would be at this stage of the season. Slow start is a bit of an understatement. A disjointed start. And I think it all kind of goes back towards the well publicized and well kind of discussed Aston Villa PSR, SCR, UEFA kind of web and triangle of finances that we found ourselves in over the off season. Realistically, it's been 2 off seasons in a row that have threatened to destabilize Aston Villa. From the point of view, and look, I know we spent the money. We have to find the money to plug the gaps, and completely understand that. But this season, this off season, more so than most, the Villa went into this offseason kind of wanting to hold on to their players. We had the Emi Martinez saga for the whole lot of the summer, which didn't help. We then had the Jacob Ramsey sale, which a lot of players were against behind the. Well, it seems like from social media, a lot of players were against behind the scenes, but the club needed to fund something. We were fine from a Premier League PSR point of view, but it was the SCR squad cost ratio in UEFA that was really hindering us. And we were under sanction from UEFA already, and we wanted to get out of that as quick as possible. So by selling Jacob Ramsey, by bringing in a couple of loan players to supplement the squad, there was this kind of quick kind of upheaval within the squad towards the end of the off season. And again, I go back to coupling it with the Emi Martinez uncertainty, even going down to like whatever it was. I think it was a 7 p.m. closing of the transfer window, even going down to 6:59 p.m. You didn't know whether Man United had made that bid. And there was mutual kind of want to kind of make that deal happen between Martinez and United, it seems. And I think all that kind of carried over into the start of the season. Unai Emery wasn't happy. Monchi ended up leaving 3 or 4 games into the season as well. He's since been replaced by your man from Sociedad, who I think is a massive signing for Aston Villa behind the scenes. But I think the first four or five games, including the League Cup, Villa were not in a very good headspace. They weren't in a very good space, probably behind the scenes either. There was a lot of plates being spun. And I think it spilled out over into the field, and I think it spilled out into some of the play that we saw. But come at the hour, I suppose, come at the one man within this team that I think that can gel the team, and outside of Unai Emery, and that was John McGinn. Couple of good performances from John McGinn, couple of real important goals, captain's performances, and the team started to rise and lift itself again. The fan base started to rise and lift with the team, and I think we were dreading. Like I'll be honest with you, I was dreading the game against Bologna because I didn't know what the hell was going to happen in that game. And Villa went out and put in a massively assured performance, and that kind of had a lot of people going, "Okay, I think we might be back." And then the Feyenoord game happened, and then everybody went, "Yeah, we look good here again." And couple it with win over Fulham, win over Burnley as well. We've been able to kind of ease ourselves into more stable form. Now we have Spurs, we've Man City, and we've Liverpool to come on the horizon. They're the tests. So we needed this little settler, I suppose, from our opening few games, and it's going to, hopefully it will do us in good stead as we do go into this murderous row of big powerful goal happy teams that we're going to be playing in over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, I didn't realise that run was so tough. So big games, by the sound of it, coming up for Aston Villa. But I just want to unpick slightly what you said, because I find it really interesting, in particular, the bit about transfers. And because, people often say, oh, it's an excuse, to talk about transfer window affecting. But I genuinely do agree that it really has a toll, in particular on the manager and the set of players, whether it's like player uncertainty, you don't know who you're buying or not. And of course, you saw, I think, Crystal Palace not this season, but I think we go back to last season, and they started really poorly. They turned the corner really good second half of the season to secure 12th in the end. But if you remember, they didn't know the future of Eze. They had so many players that up in the air, Elise, exactly, Tyreek Mitchell, Mark Gay was one that went right till the very end. I remember he scored an own goal, and then an hour before the game, the deal looked done to Liverpool. As before, of course, we saw the saga again this summer. So they had so much, uncertainty. So I mean, it's easier said than done. But do you think, in an ideal world, I don't think it will happen, but it'd be nice if the transfer window closed before the season got underway?
I think it's much of a muchness, because I think the old days, and like I remember 2006, 2005, 2006, I think it was, in Aston Villa getting done for tapping up James Beattie because David O'Leary met him and had a chat with him in a coffee shop, and it wasn't pre-prepared or anything. Someone took a photograph of it, sent it into the FA, and Villa got done for, I think they got fined for tapping up James Beattie for that. Now you've got players openly chatting and arriving at training grounds mid-season. It's wild, the backroom conversations that aren't supposed to happen outside of transfer windows unless you're in a final year of a contract. They're not supposed to, it just happens. So I don't think it makes any difference. I think the unsettling happens well out. For a point in case for Emi Martinez, apparently the communication for Martinez and Manchester United started post the January transfer window. So I don't think it makes much of a difference from an unsettling of a player or from a conversation with a player type point of view. Aston Villa knew about the Emi Martinez thing from quite a while out. That's why our first signing was Marco Bizzot, who I have to say has been absolutely brilliant since he came into the club. Villa signed him. They actually they bided their time, and they got him for half nothing. They got him for, I think it was for about 3 million, and he's played some really, like, watch his game against his two games against Bologna and against Feyenoord. Man is really good goalkeeper. So far so good anyway. And Villa needed to have that stability. This guy was coming off a Champions League performance for Brest in the last year. Villa got a really good deal there. Villa knew there was a possibility that Martinez was going to be gone. Villa had also sounded out Mark Flecken. Delighted that didn't happen, because I would have scratched my head at that one. I don't particularly think he's a brilliant goalkeeper. They'd sounded out a couple of other good goalkeepers. The guy who went to Manchester United, Lemons, they sounded out him. So they did their due diligence on goalkeepers, fully in the knowledge that Emi Martinez was pursuing this move. I think Unai Emery is such a heart in his sleeve manager that he kind of was like, right, get the move done and, be gone, or come back and be with us. Either way, I'm happy. If you don't get the move, I'll invite you back into the squad because you're a really good goalkeeper. But if you want to move, go. And I'm not going to stand in your way. And I think he's very matter of fact and black and white and kind of authoritative in that way. So from that point of view, I don't think it makes much of a difference if the transfer window closes. I think managers will probably like it so they could shuffle their deck early and go, right, we can go into the season like this. But for me, there's so much. Back in the day of when the manager was also the technical director and he was the director of football and he was looking after absolutely everything, probably mattered then. now you've got such an extended backroom team. They're looking after all the probabilities and doing the contingency plans. I don't think it makes much of a difference as long as the manager is clued in. So for me, I don't think it's huge, because these clubs are professionals. They've got 5 year plans. They've got 5 minute plans in case things
Mm.
go wrong. So I don't think so.
Okay, that's a good point. No, it's never going to happen, though, is it? Let's be honest with you. With all the
No.
different markets closing at different points,
Ah,
it's like you can't
yeah,
say to everyone, "Look, follow this." And we've already had that Turkish market, Saudi Arabian market open for longer, so you get players you just don't know whether they're going or not. In Tottenham's case,
yeah,
Basuma, you're like, "Is he going to Saudi? Is he going to Turkey?" Just
yeah.
don't know, but
And
it
that,
adds to
that
the fun.
Turkish market is wild at the moment. There seems to be no spending cap
Yeah.
in that Turkish market at the minute. Whew, like there's
Mm.
some big money being thrown around there.
Huge. I mean, it's come
Yeah,
out of nowhere as well. And of course, Saudi, I mean, need to say anymore. The money's clearly there as well. So you always do worry that your best assets can, boom, get snapped up like
exactly.
that one. But going back to kind of the season so far, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think this is being talked about enough. You've won the last 4 games in all
Mm,
competitions, and now unbeaten also in 7. I didn't realize that
yeah.
across all competitions. There's media for me, and you inclined to absolutely disagree with me, please say, but I believe there's this picture painted that Aston Villa are in this awful place and it's been an absolute disaster. Of course, it's not the start you wanted, but I actually think you look really good now and you've absolutely turned a corner. Would you say you've turned a corner,
Yeah,
Neil?
absolutely, absolutely. So here's where I get up in my soapbox and I start shouting from the rooftops as an Aston Villa fan since I was 7 years of age. So it's 33 years as an Aston Villa fan. I've never supported Aston Villa where Villa haven't been in the media pitted against another football team, and one team has been painted as the good guys and one team has been painted as the bad guys. I'll go back so even so far as I remember, like when Villa and Spurs were that the next best of the rest, I suppose, really as the Premier League. So first of all, 1992, Villa were pitted against Man United. United came first, Villa came second in the league. That was the rivalry. Obviously, United went on to do what they did. Villa dropped off. Then it was kind of Villa Spurs. Really, after that, for years, it was kind of like which is going to be the next big team. And Spurs, obviously, Spurs signed Edgar Davids, went on to sign Modric, went on to sign Van der Vaart, and Villa were signing Ivid Leonardson and Ronnie Janssen, and that was the gap between the two clubs. And Eric Baca, those PTSD days that I have from Aston Villa back then, where we had Doug Ellis and you guys had Daniel Levy, who's now since departed, and the gulf grew. Then it became Villa Man City. Villa got an injection of money from Randy Lerner. We were threatening the top four. Man City get taken over by a nation state, and essentially that fire money at the situation. Villa's money ran out, and Villa couldn't have that massive, I suppose, injection of money to catapult them into the stratosphere. Man City did. Man City have profited from here on out. Then we go back. Villa get relegated. Villa come back, and like Newcastle were relegated. Newcastle came back. Now it's Villa being pitted with Newcastle the whole time. And it's so strange the way that clubs just pin another club onto Aston Villa and go that way, specifically in media conversations. But I think you're right in what you say. Well, you are 100% right in what you say. Perspective is and narrative and context are absolutely king. And when you put it like that, unbeaten in 7, that sounds good, like that, and it is good, and that's what I talk about: the stabilizing of a situation. It was a dark cloud over the club, and there was a stabilization of it, which came from the likes of Ezri Konsa, who is England's best centre half. I'll go toe to toe with anyone in that.
Yeah,
The likes
agree.
of John McGinn, the likes of people digging in, the likes of uh, Matty Cash has been somebody who's gone under the radar. Very poor at the start of the season, has come back and is rocking through. Daniel Mallon as well. We've had a couple of big guys stand up and kind of arrest the situation and show leadership, which is something I'm very critical of this team. And I have to point it out when I see it happening. And I think that you are right in what you say. You know, three draws can be considered no wins in 3, and then 3 draws and a win is unbeaten in 4. You know, so it depends on what way you want to put pen to paper and write about it. But Villa
Mm.
are in a decent spot. We're still not playing the free flowing football that Villa have played under Unai Emery in maybe at the start of last year and specifically the start of the year before. But we're getting there. We're getting there, and as I say, our attacking situation is a work in progress, and we're getting people back from injury. So fingers crossed. I think over the next few weeks we can weather this storm and then have another assault towards Christmas winning the league again.
Yeah, I hope so for you. And of course, you've got the likes of Elliot and Sancho that
Mm,
you hope will take time to gel, etc. But
yeah.
in this game, I wager you a bet that if you lose this game, it'll be a question. Is Unai Emery under pressure, or if Tottenham lose, it'd be a case of are things crumbling under Thomas Frank. I just think I know you've got to create conversation. That's the media's job, but
Yeah.
I just feel it's very quick. And we're talking about two clubs here that, well, I think Spurs start the season well and Villa have recovered well, but you just know that
Mm.
either way, with a game like this, two big clubs, that there'll be immediately pressure if there's not a result. Or if it's a draw, it'll be, is it more drop points for Villa? Is it drop points at home for Tottenham? Do you know what I mean? It just feels like
Mm.
it's always got to be a negative in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Should just look at Nottingham Forest last couple of years. They've got a trigger happy chairman. Arguably, you could say that Spurs have had a trigger happy chairman as well over the course of the last few years, or trigger happy board. But they've stayed afloat. Yes, Ange was not. I've never been. Look, I'm Irish. I do follow Celtic. I watch them, and obviously they would be the team that I would support in Scotland. But I've never seen him as a brilliant manager. I've never seen him as this brilliant, like world class thinking manager who's got great new, fresh ideas. I think he's just a case of, I think he's Kevin Keegan. We'll score more than you, and we'll worry about it at the end of the year. And I think when he got to the Premier League, it was novel. It was different because you've got the pragmatists like Emery, like Pep Guardiola, like plenty of other managers in the league. And then you see this guy who's just balls to the wall completely, like, let's score more than you. It grabbed the headlines, but the glass came off the bloom came off the rose very, very quickly afterwards. And he's I can't even remember have Forest sacked him yet, but there's talks that they will sack him. And
Hmm.
I don't know. I can't remember. Is Forest have sacked so many people in the last couple of years that I can never keep on track.
I believe he's the Forest manager at the time of recording, but there was really, believe it or not, but there was strong links over the weekend that Sean
Yeah,
Dyche could
John Dyche
replace
could be
him.
coming
So
in there.
we'll
Yeah.
have to see what happens there. But before we get on to a little bit about my club Tottenham and the game itself, I'll be a little bit frank with this question, and by all means do shut it down. But are you concerned that Emery seems to get teams to a certain point but can't progress any further? And I could be wrong about this, but I look at Arsenal, Villarreal, it feels like he gets to a point and then it kind of flats out and stagnates. And also, do you think that Unai Emery has taken you as far as you can get in the past 2 seasons? Can he get to that level again or further?
It's a great question, and it's a question a lot of Villa fans during the start of the season were very quick to throw out. Um, if I had another son or daughter, I would name their middle name would probably be Unai or Emery or somewhere in there at the moment. I think what we have to do is, once again, perspective and context here, I think, is king. Aston Villa were coming off the back of Steven Gerrard, who was an abomination of a manager, an absolute, like, he was, the man spoke down Villa at every opportunity. He said that Chelsea should be coming to Villa Park and winning 10-0, that, after they beat us. He dressed down team captains. He basically made massive demands of the board. We've gone from that to Unai Emery, a highly respected manager, a professor of the game. Aston Villa is exactly, I think it's exactly the project that somebody like Unai Emery should want, where he is in his, I suppose, his age profile, and also what he's looking to do. He's looking to knock the cobwebs off that hole. Does he bring teams so far and stagnate? I think he's moved on too quickly himself. I think he's been ill advised himself previously by moving on too quickly. I think his time at Sevilla would show you different. He didn't bring them to a point of stagnation. He consistently won there. Goes to Arsenal. Had actually like an underrated season at Arsenal, considering he was the man after the man. And that is a lot to bear in it. Goes to Paris Saint Germain, wins the league with Paris Saint Germain. Cutthroat owners there again. Dropped him. Comes back, builds with Villarreal. Leaves Villarreal the year after they win the Europa League again. So I don't know where the stagnation thing comes from. I think a lot of it comes from Arsenal fans chatting an awful lot about them, longing for Arsene Wenger and wanting them to be this stable entity again, which they've recently got under Arteta, albeit to no success outside of an FA Cup. So what I'm getting at with that diatribe there is that I think Unai Emery wants to blow the cobwebs off that. I think he doesn't feel like that's the case. I think he was ill advised to go to Zenit. I think he was ill advised to go to Paris Saint Germain. I think arguably he was ill-advised to go to Arsenal, although there was no way he could have turned that down with the riches that of talent that they had and coming off what they were coming off at the time. But I think with Aston Villa, we've handed him the keys. We've allowed him to shape this from the bottom to top for good or for bad. And we don't know whether that's going to come back and bite us in 5 years' time if he decides, or 2 years' time, or six days' time if he decides he needs to leave. But I think he's happy in that environment. And I think the only reason that Villa have stagnated, and I will go to bat for this one as well. The only reason Villa have stagnated is they're fighting the boardroom battles and the spreadsheet battles that need to be fought. But they're overperforming as well on the field. So I think the overperformance for Unai Emery is something that should be spoken about, considering the amount of upheaval, losing Douglas Luiz, losing John Duran, losing Moussa Diaby. Anybody who's half good, who's come into the club, who's shown promise, we've had to move on for profit. And that's a disruptive factor in itself. And that naturally is going to regress it. It's the first time we've gotten into Europe 3 years in a row in donkey's years. We're the first Premier League team, I think, oh gosh, I can't remember the statistic, but we're the first Premier League team outside the Big Six to do 3 years in a row.
Mm.
I think it's in something like 25 years. Villa are arguably overachieving. Yes, you can talk about money spent. Money needs to be spent, but money was also recouped. I arguably think we've overachieved the last 3 seasons. There's going to be a regression to the mean until we sort out the finances side of thing, which I think this year has done. And then I suppose I will judge Unai Emery next year and the year after that. But for me, he walks on water. And I think that you can have a club that has all the riches in the world, but if they don't have that coherent manager or that coherent kind of backroom plan like Emery is bringing to this club, you're going to falter at some stage. It's dangerous because if he leaves, the whole thing falls like a deck of cards. But if he stays and builds something like maybe Alex Ferguson, well, then it could be a dynasty. It could be something good, but there's nothing guaranteed in any of that.
No, I think he's done really well. I think he's simply transformed you. So it's good to hear. But I thought I'd just
Yeah.
try and ask that
No,
different
you're
point
right.
of view of question. So thank you
Yeah.
for that. But before we get to the game, a little bit about Tottenham. Be totally honest with me here. Firstly, how do you view Tottenham as a club and their supporters? Is it a case of respect, envy, or not really caring? Be honest.
There's a lot of Irish Spurs fans. My cousin is actually a very active Irish Spurs fan. Within the Irish the Irish supporters clubs and stuff like that. He's very active in social media too. I don't mind Spurs. Look, the diversion of Spurs and Villa's rivalry for me happened 20 years ago. As I talked about, you guys were signing Edgar Davids and Van der Vaart, and we were signing who we were signing. You can't compete with that. I think that I said as well there, I'm very envious of your stadium, albeit I would never want Villa to move from Villa Park because of the lovely traditional red brick. I used to be a conservation architect previously, so I love all that stuff. I actually worked with the guy who did all the conservation architecture on Villa Park when they were building the Doug Ellis and the Trinity stand as well. So that was years and years and years ago. So I absolutely love that stadium, but my God, it was nice and refreshing to get into that Tottenham stadium, because I've been to a lot of quote unquote soulless bowls that have been built recently. That one wasn't it. That wasn't it. It was in the middle of a residential area. It was nice to get to. It was easy enough I found it easy to get to, and the stadium was easily traversed. And the viewpoint, the vantage points were really good. I was right in the corner, and yes, I was watching the Cleveland Browns get beaten by the Minnesota Vikings in the last minute. A Cleveland Browns fan, being a Cleveland Browns fan, that wasn't the nicest of memories, but the vantage points were super, So it's a very impressive stadium. So I'm definitely envious of that. And look, I am envious of your earning power. The club turnover some revenue. Like, you guys will never be in an issue with SCR or PSR ever. Yes, you've got your London roots. Makes things an awful lot easier. But it's been built over 20 years, as I said, through good management, through good ownership, through times when fans were screaming at the club saying they haven't spent enough, or, that they're playing hardball over deals. You guys are reaping the benefits of that. If you guys get on a roll, and obviously, I don't know how attainable winning the Premier League is for any team outside of Liverpool and Manchester City currently at the moment. But if some team gets it right, catches lightning in a bottle, they could go on a 2 or 3 year winning streak. I think Spurs are pretty well, with everything you've got going on there. You just need a good 2 or 3 years, an exceptional 2 or 3 years, to vault past what Pochettino did. And you guys are probably the best placed team to do it, I think.
Joe, that's good to hear. Actually, I appreciate that. Thank you. Firstly about the stadium, and then about that. If I'm honest with you, and I don't think I'm the only Spurs fan that fears that some certain club across the other side of North London could be the club to do it, but I hope that's not the case. Do you think they have any chance of winning the title? I mean, you're right to break in particular that tough kind of streak of Liverpool at the moment and City of the past, but Arsenal spent a lot of money and Liverpool haven't got the start they wanted.
Look, there's a lot of battle scars with Arsenal. Like there's 3 years there of battle scars. There's a concerted like conversation point about can Arteta get it done. Obviously, they're the next best of the rest. I just don't know would it ever be sustainable for them. And they're kind of a team whereby until they do it, I don't know will they do it. But whereas like you arguably say that the Lightning that they've caught in a bottle has been their three second place finishes in a row. There's an argument to be
Hmm.
made by that. The big day tends to phase them. That the progression in the Champions League hasn't been mind blowing at any stage. Yes, they've got their striker now in Gurkha's, but it's kind of a case of until they do it, I'll never be sure if they can do it. Whereby I can see pathways to sustainable success with other clubs as well. And maybe Arsenal, maybe this is what sustained success looks like for Arsenal. I don't know.
Yeah, they seem to be happy with their second place. Say no more.
Yeah.
But no,
I'd
thank
kill
you.
for a second place for Aston Villa. Don't get me wrong. It's
Yeah, exactly.
not to be sniffed at.
No, and I think I would right now as well with Thomas Frank's first season. Absolutely take second,
Yeah.
hands down. You don't have to ask me twice about that. But Neil, do you have any past memories that maybe stick with you that are good, which I'm sure you'll choose, or bad of playing Spurs from an Aston Villa point of view?
I don't really. I don't have many massive memories about playing because like Villa have these teams whereby we never really come out on the right side of, and they're more than often I think in the Premier League because we've had some really turgid seasons in the Premier League. But I don't really like my there's actually zero games that stand out really of playing Spurs, but I do have great memories of back as a kid when I first started watching Aston Villa. You get home, you'd see match of the day, and you'd see the Holston Pills jersey. You'd see Tim Sherwood in the Holston Pills jersey, or you'd see Jurgen Klinsmann. I remember when Klinsmann signed for Spurs. Like even I knew, like I was 7, maybe 9 years of age. Even I knew that was a big deal because the World Cup was going on in US. So Spurs have always had this draw. They've always had this ability to bring in a big name player, and the eye is always drawn my supporter. My supportership, I suppose, of Aston Villa has been drawn to Spurs for that reason. And like I remember Chris Armstrong, remember in Match magazine and collecting Panini stickers for sticker books. I remember I nearly completed a sticker book, except I couldn't get Chris Armstrong for whatever reason. And apparently he wasn't that difficult to find. I could not. He was the only one I missed for 1 year. So I harbor resentment towards Chris Armstrong. I really do.
Love that. It sticks with you, doesn't it?
It
It's quite
does.
funny
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't think I'll ever get over it.
No, annoying to say the least. But can I ask you if there's one Spurs player you take at Villa right now, if you could choose just one, who would it be? Do you know?
Hmm. One Spurs player that if I could take for Aston. Um,
It's tough.
do you know who like I do a lot of scouting work for like and sometimes I pick players I like and I do stuff in them for for my podcast as in saying this how you could fit in with Aston Villa and stuff. Like I've done courses on football scouting and everything. It's a big passion point of mine. I have Y Scout accounts. I've spent way too much money that my missus doesn't know about on getting access to footage. But there was one player I remember that I identified early. He was only maybe 17, 18. It was Papa Sarr, and he was at Metz at the time. And I was like, geez, this kid is going to be good. This kid, he just had everything. He was such a rangy player at that age. And I remember I did a piece on him. Actually, I did a piece on him and I released it the day that my daughter was born. So that's like 4 years ago now. And then Spurs snapped him up nearly about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. And I was like, "Feck, I thought the Villa might buy him." He's definitely somebody I've always really liked in that midfield area. But Villa are kind of stocked there in midfield. Look, I suppose your centre halves, Mickey van der Ven, take him any day of the week. I take Pedro Porro. I take him any day of the weekend. Look, obviously you've got an array of attackers there as well. Villa were in for Matt Tells previous to him going to Spurs, but yeah, there's a nice little smorgasbord of players there that would fit in with Aston Villa. I'm going to go with Mickey Van de Ven just because I think he's a super defender. Can't
That's a
say
good
Christian
shout.
Romero because he wants to kill half our team. But so I can't say
Yeah.
him.
And if you to flip that question, and if I had to answer that from a Villa point of view, it's quite tough because I really like Conser. I think you make a very good point about that. But Tottenham have really good centre back depth. But of course, Conser can play right back, so I'm not going to turn a blind to that. So I'd always consider that. But I look at someone like a Harvey Elliott and go, how Spurs could do a little bit of competition with the likes of Xavi Simmons in that 10 with Madison and Kulusevski out. That'd be the very good one. Watkins, if he's in a bit better form, would have gone for him because though we have three strikers, we don't have someone that's consistent. But Watkins has struggled a little bit. I tell you what, I'll ask you about that, Neil. Watkins' struggles. Of course, he did score, didn't he, before the international break? Do you think he now push on now?
Watkins is a streaky player. He goes on periods where he doesn't score. He goes on periods where it kind of gets in his head. He has a couple of one-on-ones he misses, or he'll fluff his lines like he did for England there. That one where he collided with the post. That's in his game. He's a converted winger. He's never been this lethal finisher like Didier Drogba or an Erling Haaland. He's never had that in his locker. But when he goes on streaks of scoring goals, he goes on streaks of scoring goals. And Unai Emery's got the best out of him. He's got the most goals for Aston Villa in Premier League history. I am a huge supporter of Ollie Watkins. I have defended him when he was rightfully being criticised. I've defended him when he's been wrongfully criticised. And look, I think I think for him, he's one of the few people that he's heir apparent to Harry Kane in the England squad. He's gotten all these very important goals for us. Everybody will always think that it's easy to go out and find another striker and just pluck one off another team and he'll fit into your system. But number nines are damn hard to find. They really are hard to find. You just have to look at Lee Carsley talking about the dirt of number nines in the under 21 England setup. And that's England. That's the whole of England. Like the biggest footballing playing nation in the world. They're finding it hard to make number nines. There's only one country probably making them at the moment, and that's Germany. They just seem to have a lot of them coming through. So it's not as easy to discard your striker and then pick one up off the street. However, saying that, Randall Colomwani doesn't catch on at Spurs. I gladly see him in claret and blue because he has something that I think will translate into the Premier League, as being a number 9 striker, and be interesting to see what happens to him when he actually finally gets up and running for you guys, if he gets up and running for you guys. But on the Watkins side of things, a lot of people are, because of our financial difficulties, a lot of people are consumed with this whole, have we missed the boat with his value? Sometimes you got to forget about the value. Sometimes you got to look at the fact he scored all the goals he scored for Aston Villa. And that's the value that he has for the club, as opposed to 40, 50 million or whatever the case may be. It's a shame that the game of football has become about pound signs and decimal points. And he's definitely somebody, because of the fact he misses and he goes on these streaks of barren streaks, should I say, it's the first thing that gets brought up for fans, and we tend to forget the good streaks he goes on. And the fact that he ends up with 14, 15 goals nearly every season, that always gets pushed to the side. So I'm here to keep him. I'm the conductor for the Ollie Watkins bus, and I'm stamping the tickets every day when people want to get that bad.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely love that. It's good. You always should defend your players when they wear the shirt. I mean, it gets from Spurs fan, it just annoys me when people get the likes of Tells back, Odebear's back. I think just get behind them, for goodness sake. You can have valid questions and concerns, like with Tell, why we signed him, but I just don't get how people almost, in my opinion, are waiting for him to fail or don't want him to do well or waiting to jump. For example, on social media, they've got that draft in X, waiting to have a go at him, another game without a goal. Do you get that at Villa, that kind of fans almost like wanting players not to do well or not backing them?
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Matt, like, I've been critical of Matty Cash. I've been critical of him this season. But sometimes you got to go up and you got to stand up and say, right, he's weathered the storm. He's been solid and steady now. Same with Ollie Watkins. He goes in those streaks. Everybody's like, oh, Watkins is, it takes him 10 chances to score. And I'm like, yeah, but he will score. Give him, like, if he gets 10 chances, Villa will be 1-0 up. You know, like that's the positive way of thinking of it, and there's a negative way of thinking of it as well. So, yeah, look, am I overly positive at times? I absolutely know I am, but that's the fun of following football. I don't let Aston Villa, like Aston Villa defines me to the point that I'm the only Villa fan in the village, you know. But it doesn't define me to the point whereby I have to share their struggles on a minutely basis. And I think football has become that for some people, and that's absolutely fine.
Mm.
I've no problem with it, but I prefer to enjoy following football and to look for the positive points in it while acknowledging the negative points in it as well. And criticism is not above everybody, anybody, you know. So we can't criticize, but no, like there's no point in having a mind if you don't change it. You know, at times, if times are good, times are good. Times are bad, call it out. And that's I think the football media as a whole, going back to when you were talking about, oh, Villa haven't won in so long and they've had a poor start to the season. I think that's the narrative. Like it's all about mindset. If you want to be negative about something, you can be negative about everything. If you want to be positive about something, you have to really look for the positives at some stage. And that's what I prefer to do. I prefer to go on those little treasure hunts at times.
Yeah, absolutely with you on that. Thank you. So let's shift into this game in particular, because, like I said earlier, and I'll say it again, I think it's important. Villa come into this game with 4 straight wins in all competitions and 7 games unbeaten. So, how do you feel about this game? Talk about a tough period. Of course, you're coming away from home. What's the feeling like amongst yourself and Villa fans generally at the moment?
I'll be honest with you, it's a kind of a jump into the unknown given our start to the season. Uh, we don't fare well in London. Um, we don't fare well against London teams in general. We've been to Brentford twice. We've come away with nothing. We've come away with a loss on penalties. We've excuse me. We've come away with a lot. We've played Brentford in the league, and we've lost there too. Um, you know, play Crystal Palace. We might as well not never show up against Crystal Palace. Just literally put out 11 cones and just let them score what they want to score, because we cannot play against Crystal Palace. It's just doesn't happen. So I think the leap into the unknown for me here is that it's going to be the biggest test. Okay, yes, we've ramped up with Bologna, we've ramped up with Feyenoord, but this is the big test. Are we actually back in stability again? Villa shipped 3 goals at the weekend. Questions will continue to be asked, specifically with Liverpool and City on the horizon as well. So it's probably the litmus test. I don't expect Villa to go and to be in any way, shape, or form massively expensive in this game. I think Villa will shut up shop as much as they possibly can, and I think we look to be good at set pieces. I think you could see a Sean Dyche type performance for Villa, because I think that they will want to mitigate any of the losses to the good form that they've had. Like we said previously, unbeaten in 7, make it unbeaten in 8. Doesn't have to be a win, just has to be, the narrative has to be unbeaten in 8 again. And I think that that's the kind of positivity that the small wins, I think that Unai Emery will be looking for over the course of the next few weeks. Well, internally he'd be saying you can win every game, but I think, you know, if you were to give him 3 draws in the next 3 games, I think he'll go, yeah, take that.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about trying to get something, isn't it, rather than nothing. And if you can go on a run like
Mm.
Palace had with that unbeaten record, that would be
Yeah.
not bad at all. But in this game, are there any Spurs players you fear in particular that could cause you the most problems? I mean, we spoke about some that you take at Villa, but what about ones that can maybe cause trouble to your back line and could control the game or be very good defensively? It's completely up to you, you pick.
Uh, Mamakudos. Mamakudos
Mm.
will cause us trouble. He will. Fact that he can play across that front line, we start off on the right hand side, do and maybe go at a 32-year-old Luca Dean, who's been very good, or maybe Ian Matson, I don't know. But Luca Dean's obviously forced his way back into the French squad. He had an assist during the week. So I think the wearing down of our fullbacks sometimes is what teams look to do. Back into midfield again. I'm a huge fan of Rodrigo Bentancur. I don't know if he's I don't know if he'll start at the weekend. I presume he will. I think he's played was it 5 out of 6 games for Spurs in the league so far. Huge fan of him. He tends to clog up space and he's very good with the ball at his feet. Another player who I scouted about 6 months out from when he joined Spurs that I wanted Villa to sign. So I think that
Mm.
he's himself and João Palhinha are going to be very difficult for Villa to get through. You know, we aren't amazingly creative through the center. And if we aren't creative through the center, we're resorted to crosses from deep. And that's not a great thing for Aston Villa to be forced into. So I think those 2 guys in the middle, coupled with Kudus' pace and the fact that, you know, you could see him move across that front line taking into account maybe gassing up Dina, moving into that 10 role, coming in a bit more inverted. Then you've got the two centre halves, and you've got probably maybe Lamar Bogard might be in there, maybe a Boubacar Kamara, and then he could end up over on the left hand side for a short period of time and take on Matty Cash. So the defensive stability the two guys will give you, along with his just electric pace and ability, it never really works out well for Villa when that kind of when we can't defeat that mid block, and when you've got somebody who's got massive pace up top. That's where Villa tend to struggle.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. I mean, how do you think you can hurt us in this game, and who do you think in particular from Villa can hurt Tottenham?
That's an interesting one, because we've got such an unsettled striking line, or three behind the striker. So unsettled. Like, Morgan Rogers hasn't had a brilliant start to the season. Normally he would be the first person you'd say, yeah, Morgan Rogers can run through anything. He can run through a crack in the wall. He's the only thing that can get through certain holes are light and Morgan Rogers. That's usually that's what we were saying last year, but it hasn't really clicked with him for Villa this year. Outstanding for England, but hasn't really clicked for him for England. And that's why if you play him through the centre and you're coming up against Bentancur and Polina, yeah, that's going to negate somebody like Morgan Rogers. I think he plays from the left in this game. Who plays through the centre, I don't know. Maybe an Emi Buendia, resurgent Emi Buendia. And then who plays on the right? Again, I don't know. It's very difficult to see who's going to start. For me, I think if I think John McGinn is just such all action for Aston Villa at the moment, that when John McGinn plays well, Aston Villa play well. If John McGinn is all over, like, you look back at when Villa played Paris Saint-Germain the second game last year, closest, Villa ran PSG ragged in that second half, and John McGinn was amazing. He's high octane, he's high intensity. If he gets to the pitch of that, and if he turns into this berserker mode where he's just picking up the ball, using his bum to move people around the field, and getting on balls at the edge of the area and spraying the ball around, he has these games where he transcends into a different level. He's not able to do it every game, but there's just these games where he just, like, it's like as if he's in Mario Kart and he gets a star and he turns invincible and he just goes brilliant. That's what we're looking for, and that's what he's done a couple of times this year. So maybe we need one of those. I don't think we'll see Harvey Elliott start this game. Unai Emery has been pretty vocal on the fact that he needs to get to grips with the system Villa play at the moment. He's a bit loose for the system. Gifted player, don't get me wrong. Does Daniel Mallon start on the right hand side? I liked what I saw from him, but I think everything is going to revolve around John McGinn. Because we've got so many injuries in that midfield area, we won't have Tielemans back. We will have Onana back. And I think John McGinn might be pushed that small bit further forward. And I think he might be the guy who plays in the 10, and things might have to revolve around him in there.
Okay, that's an interesting shout. Thank you for that one. That's good to hear. I mean, Marlon, always impresses me when I do see him, to be fair. But what is your predicted Villa 11, 1 to 11 that you think Unai Emery will go with on the day?
It'll be Emi Martinez in goals. You'll have Matty Cash, Ezri Konsa, and Torres, I think he'll go with in this one, as opposed to Tyrone Mings. Left back then is a toss of a coin. Genuinely, they've both had very similar minutes. I think he goes with Digne at left back. It will be, I'm going to go with Lamar Bogard, and Boubacar Kamara will be in the centre midfield. I would pick Mallon on the right, John McGinn in the centre, and Morgan Rogers on the left with Ollie Watkins up top. But once you get past Emi Martinez and Matty Cash and Ezri Konsa, genuinely every other place there is a flip of a coin between the player that are playing with them. And that's good for Villa's depth point of view, but also Unai Emery strives with a settled 11, and that's another one of the reasons with the erratic performances at the start of the season too. He's tried to change it around. He's tried to bring players in. They haven't reached the pitch of games at times, and he's just finding that balance now, I think, with these players. But like, if you were to, here's one for you: if both Jadon Sancho, should I say, and Harvey Elliott are on the bench, Sancho's coming off the bench first. I can nearly guarantee you that. And it's not because Harvey Elliott's the worst player or Sancho's the better player. It's just the fit to the system. Sancho's actually been pretty impressive for Villa since he's joined. In the short spells that he's had, so has Elliott. But Unai Emery seems to trust him in that more maverick left wing position more so than he trusts putting Elliott on that more disciplined right side, or even into that more extremely rigid and disciplined number 10 role that Unai Emery plays. So yeah, it'll
Hmm.
be interesting to see what the actual 11 is.
Okay, we'll have to see what it is. Of course, that makes a difference how you think you do. So, I mean, think they're both good players and both have a good season for you. But
Mm.
do you think they will force their way into that 11 as the season goes on? Maybe more of a natural fit to the system because they both seem like they've got the quality anyway.
I think Elliott will. I think Elliott will force his way into this team because he's just too good a footballer. I think realistically, I think Villa have that purchase option on Elliott. I think they know they want to sign him, but I think what Unai Emery is doing is Unai Emery wants him to be 100% fit. But I mean by he wants him to be 100% confident with this role. I think he sees Harvey Elliott as a 3, 4, 4, 5 year player for Villa. I think he's at the moment he can afford to bring him in and chop and change him. I think the same way he saw Daniel Mallon last year, didn't use him a whole pile, left him out of the Champions League squad. But he needed to make sure that he was right when he was going to go right. You're in here now, and we're depending on you for a while. We'll see. Does that happen with Mallon? I think Harvey Elliott will have the same fate. I think he'll be used sparingly with the view to him being maybe more of a longer term player down the line.
Unai Emery does seem to introduce him gradually. It's just different ways. Some managers believe
Very
chucking them
much.
straight in,
Did it with
introducing
Tielemans
gradually.
too. Yep, did it with
Yeah.
Tielemans, doing it with Matson. So it's not new for Unai Emery to do this.
There you go then. Some vital context. Thank you. Can I get your score prediction in this game then on Sunday afternoon and who you think is going to score as well?
I'm going to go with 1-1, and I think Mohamed Kudus is going to score, and I think Villa will get a goal from. I'm going to say Amadou Nana comes off the bench and Villa score. He scores from a corner.
Okay, thank you.
Get
Would you
good
take?
odds on that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. Would you take a draw in this game? I get the impression you would.
I would. Yeah. I would take a draw in this game for sure. Yeah, we've Villa.
Okay.
The way Villa have been playing, we've no right to go and beat Spurs. you know, I would take a win. Don't get me wrong, but I would certainly take a draw in this game. Yeah, for
Okay.
absolute. It's about preserving the not losing rate. If you look through the years where Brighton have always finished in and around the European places, they've drawn their way to those places. It's about not losing. That builds the confidence, it builds the cohesion, it builds the chemistry between the team, builds a resoluteness and a concrete like mentality. The fact that you don't lose, the fact then that the narrative gets changed to these guys haven't lost in 14, 15. That's a big thing. Yes, you might only have 20 points from those 14, 15 games, but it's the competitive, it's the fact that we can compete here and we're confident. It means your structure, it means the ins and outs of your transitional play. And I think the team and Unai Emery will want that because we have a long season. I genuinely think he wants to win the Europa League. I think that's his number one this year. He will never say it. He will always say it's the Premier League. But I think that's his number one. I think he feels he wants a trophy now with Villa. And if we can stay resolute in the league, that builds that fortitude for cup football in the Europa League as we go down through the stages there as well.
So it could be a very good season for Villa if you do win that Europa League and are competitive in the league
You
as well.
you guys know it. It brings you to the Champions League.
Yeah,
You know.
it's huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no need to panic at all for Villa. Before we get to some end of season predictions, I've just got a few questions for you generally in terms of supporting Villa. Firstly, what's your earliest memory supporting Villa that maybe sticks to you the most?
The reason I support Aston Villa is, and it's why I name my podcast after Paul McGrath. We were lucky enough in Ireland to get 3 o'clock games streamed on terrestrial TV, through the broadcaster here, RTE. And I remember Aston Villa played Crystal Palace. I wasn't like back then soccer. I lived very rurally. It was all Irish sports. It was hurling and Gaelic football. But soccer is as we tend to call it over here at times because it just differentiates between Gaelic football. It was on TV and it was Crystal Palace versus Aston Villa, and I was drawn to centre. It's not normal that a young kid would be drawn to centre half. It's normally a striker, but Villa weren't exactly doing great that day. And this guy was just everywhere. He blocked absolute pebbles that day, Paul McGrath did. He was amazing. And it was just before an international break. It must have been around this time of the year or whenever the international breaks were. And then on the Wednesday, there he was in a green jersey. And I remember going to my dad. I goes, Dad, is that the guy that we saw at the weekend? And he said, yeah, that's him. That's Paul McGrath. Instantly, Aston Villa were my team. Went into school, started talking about Aston Villa, started living as if I was a Villa fan all my life. To my next birthday, I got this incredibly cool Reebok Aston Villa bomber jacket, and I'll never forget it. I used to go into school and I used to always buy Match magazines. A lot of the other guys would buy Shoot magazine. If there was a Villa poster in Shoot this week, and I had a United poster because everyone was a United fan, I'd swap that for Villa posters. It just became and it wasn't to be different or anything. It really wasn't. It was just I kind of knew no different. And at the same time, Villa were actually were very competitive then as well. We had a lot of Irish base, Paul McGrath, Andy Townsend, Ray Houghton. Um, so it seemed like the natural fit for me, to follow Aston Villa. And you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world because I think sports should be seen through the lens of highs and lows. And if you've been like, all you got to do is look at United fans now. They don't know what way to look when they cross the road because they're discombobulated because they've had 10 or 11 seasons or whatever without massive victories. That's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for sport. It's unhealthy for the enjoyment of sport to be consistently winning. And as I used to always say to people, they go, "Why'd you follow Villa?" I goes, "We win this Saturday. I can go out that night and I'm 2 foot off the ground and my chest is proud, and I can drink the night away, happy that we won a game. I don't need to win trophies. Be absolutely delighted with sport." And I think that people forget about that sport is for enjoyment. It's for enjoyment throughout the year. It's not for disappointment throughout the year and enjoyment at the end. It's the
Mm.
opposite way around. So I wouldn't change it for the world following Aston Villa. I really wouldn't.
I agree with you, and I think that's actually a really nice story. So I appreciate you sharing that. It's a unique one, but that's what makes it so good and so nice to hear. So thank you, Neil, for sharing that. Do you have a favourite memory or match supporting Aston Villa? You speak about kind of your earliest memory there.
The favorite game. I think my favorite game that I ever attended was the one that sticks out in my mind. It was the Aston Villa played against Sheffield United. I'm trying to remember the year. Was it 2007? It was the 25-year anniversary of winning the European Cup, and I got to see them all paraded out in the field. And Villa 1-3-1 that day, and Patrick Berger scored an absolute worldie that day as well. And I was sitting in the lower Holt. I normally sit in the upper Trinity when I go to Villa games because I'm part of the Lions Club here, and that's where the tickets are usually there. But that day I was sitting in the lower Holt. It's my first time ever being in the Holt. It was rocking because all the heroes of '82 were there. They were all paraded. There was flags put on, or there was back in the day, like this is before you'd have all tifos and everything. You'd have something on the seats every day now. Whereas then there was scarves that had proud history, bright future. We thought that was the case at the time. But that game was brilliant because Villa went out and they played really well. And I think it was a Bonlahor goal. Ashley Young scored just in front of us as well. And then Patrick Berger scored a really, really clever goal as well. And I always go back to that goal to that game as being a real fun game to remember because of the celebration, being there to see 25-year anniversary of one of only a few clubs in England, or it was one of only a handful of clubs at the time that had won the European Cup, and to see it paraded around Villa Park with those legends. Some of them sadly have passed away since. And that's something that'll stay with me forever. And doing it in the Holds where I don't normally sit was extra special, I think, for me. Yeah, so that's one that really sticks out in my mind.
That's another nice little story there. Thank you, Neil. It's always good to hear. I always enjoy hearing opposition fans, that kind of thoughts, the history of being a fan.
Yeah.
So I do this little bit. But what does it, mean, Aston Villa, to you personally now?
It it means having to get up off the couch 4 nights a week. It's my missus. I go out recording a podcast and hope she doesn't throw a cup of tea at me. That's what it means. But look, it's a godsend. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, you can see my background here. It's all Aston Villa with a couple of Limerick hurling jerseys here sprinkled in. You've got Paul McGrath jerseys here. You've got Mark Boston. And I've got a cupboard here of more jerseys that I would love to have up on the wall. It's become it's become really good because I made so many good friends. Not being somebody from Birmingham, being somebody who picked up following this club. Social media has allowed me to get in contact with a lot of people. I've made some real lifelong, long-lasting friends throughout the world, specifically in Birmingham. I go to Birmingham now. I can shake hands with 40 people. They will all know who I am, even though I live 600 miles away or whatever it is. So I think it's become really cool that way. But the biggest thing for me is I played a lot of sports when I was younger. COVID, I feel, kind of took my last hurrah. I was 34, 35 years of age. I thought I had one more good year left in me. And that took it for me. And I needed something to really engross myself, to get back into that team ethos, or that ethos of not letting somebody down, of training 4 days a week. Um, Training 4 days a week and playing a match at the weekends. And podcasting has allowed me to do that, keeping that routine for a clear mind, a sense of purpose, if you want to call it. And it's because of Aston Villa that I've done that. It's immersed my love for Aston Villa. Yes, I can close my door and not think about it if we have a bad loss. It does, like, obviously it's, you take the dog for a walk and you come home and you're fine again. But takes up like 5 days of my week, 6 days of my week, is built around Aston Villa, content creation for Aston Villa, talking about the game, scouting players and stuff like that. So yeah, as I've grown older, it's become a bigger part of my life, but it's really kind of filled a void of actually playing the sport that I used to play, or playing the sports that I used to play. It's really filled that void for me on a personal level, to give me a structure within my week, which is great. And it helps that we play on Wednesdays and Thursdays now in Europe. Otherwise, there would be a lot of free time between Saturday or Sunday and the following week as well. So that does help.
Well, your missus might not agree with being
Oh,
what,
she
two
definitely
podcasts a
doesn't.
week and
Oh,
two games,
no.
but I get your
And
point.
two young kids, yeah. So it's sometimes there are times there whereby I go missing at bedtime and she can't find me to put one of them to bed, and yeah, I have to lock the door here so that I don't get given out to. But needs must.
Exactly. You don't want a cup of tea thrown on you at all, do you? Absolutely
Exactly.
not. Especially at that time. But no, thank you. And I won't ask you your favourite Villa player of all time is. I think we know that. You've said that. So, yeah, am I right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
And
Mr. McGrath. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, they've
We
written
were we
down.
were lucky enough. We did a live podcast to about 350 people with him. Not this February 2024, and yeah, that's a bucket list moment. That's something that will stick with me forever. Getting to meet him in person. Uh, he signed stuff for everybody that was there. He stayed about 3.5 hours longer than he was actually scheduled to stay for. Yeah, like, they say you should never meet your heroes, but I say you should always meet them and tell them how much they mean to you, because it's people are special. People are special. People do special things, and I know they might have heard it 100 times, but sometimes that 101st time might really make it sink in for them. So I was
Mm.
just so happy to meet him and delighted to tell him what he means to me. And unashamedly do it too.
Exactly, and you should always be honest, absolutely. And we all have
Absolutely.
someone we look up to, whether they're hero in
Yeah.
our eyes or not. There'll be, promise you, someone somewhere, even if it be is someone crazy. So absolutely,
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, you just don't know what state they're in, or how they feel, etc. So to tell them what they mean, I
Yeah.
think it's just so important. But
Absolutely.
I will ask you who your all-time favorite Villa manager is, because I won't ask you player, I'll ask you manager.
Ooh, good question. Um, it's hard not to say Unai Emery for the success, but I absolutely loved John Gregory at the time. John Gregory was cheeky. He came out with lovely quips. He's a legend even off the field now. Like, you go down Villa Park and in the fan zone, he plays guitar. He plays in a rock band in a fan zone beforehand. He's just seems like a cool guy. And we had some middling success. We got to FA Cup final, last one in Wembley under him. Roberto Di Matteo scored. David James had a bit of a flap at it, and what could have been that day. Um, I'm going to say John Gregory, just because he's the first. He's the first name that came into my mind that I started smiling and smirking at. So I'm going to say John Gregory. It was a
Okay,
fun
if you
time. He
if
tried to
you
shoot. He tried to shoot Dwight York and stuff like that. Like, he was brilliant. He was box office stuff. He really was.
yeah, that's funny. You know, that's the thing. Sometimes I'm like, oh no, I'm only young, I don't get to see all of this. But even I try and go back and listen to history. So that's why I always, again, like asking fans the history of their club and them as a supporter,
Mm,
because my memory's not fantastic anyway. But I've only had a few
yeah.
years of seeing it. But if you win the Europa League, does that all of a sudden become Unai Emery as your all-time favourite manager?
Yeah. Because it'd be the biggest trophy we've seen. Like I've seen Villa win, obviously in '94 League Cup, '96 League Cup, '94 with Ron Atkinson, who was another brilliant character. Brian Little is just a legend. Brian Little is probably really the answer I should have given just there a moment ago. But I said I'd give something a bit different. Brian Little, what he given to the club, injured early, had to had to leave football at an early age due to injury, and then come back and manage Aston Villa, and manage them to a cup and still be the ambassador he is for Aston Villa now. He's a fantastic man. Um, I've seen those two wins, a European Cup with Aston Villa. Like realistically speaking, 4 years ago, I was writing down my hopes for Aston Villa would be to finish 12th, and to have gone from staying up in the Premier League under Dean Smith, who I absolutely loved as well, to the hardship of Steven Gerrard, who just was not a fit for the club at all. And then in the 4 short years, going on to win the Europa League and getting back into the Champions League. That's pinch your stuff moment for a team like Aston Villa, who are a big club, but have never really perform to the level of a big club
Mm.
in recent history, so yeah. Oh, it would have to, I think there'd be very few Villa fans under the age of 45 that would disagree with that. Probably they would say Ron Sanders or Tony Barton, because they might have seen 1982. Obviously that's going to trump everything, but yeah, there'd be very few Villa fans that would be hard pressed to say that another manager was their favorite manager over Unai Emery, if that was the case, because of all the European qualifications. And then to go away and do something and win something and have your name etched on this. Yes, it's the second trophy in Europe, but it's a damn good trophy to win, and it gets you places. And it's as my dad always said to me when I was growing up, when they brought in the top four to go to Champions League, and when Villa actually finished, and they finished fourth to get into the Champions League, Dad said it's brilliant and I love it and it's great for you. He goes, you can't drink out of fourth place, you drink out of the FA Cup though, So that's what it's always stuck with me. You win a cup means a lot. You can drink out of a cup, you can't drink out of fourth place. So
I love
it,
that. That's great. I think that's so good. That's so true as well, is it really? Think
yeah.
about it. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's end with some end of season predictions then. So I plan to do Premier League and Europe. So we'll start with my club, Tottenham, first. Where do you think we will finish in the Premier League this season?
I think Spurs should be aiming to finish top, not even top five, top four. I think Spurs should. I think that Spurs should be looking to crash the party of Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Spurs. I think it should be. I think you guys are better placed to do that than Chelsea. I think Chelsea is just so chaotic that if the wheels start to fall off, like they kind of scraped. I won't say they scraped in, but for the money they've spent, you have to say that that they kind of scraped in last year. Even though it was Newcastle that got that last fifth spot. I think Spurs should be looking to finish in the Champions League spots. I think not finishing in the Champions League spot would be a bit underwhelming. I think for Spurs.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that
Great
for Thomas
players,
Frank's
great
first
manager.
season.
Mm,
Mm. I'll take that. I think realistically, before a ball was kicked, you'd probably say top six. But the more you see Thomas Frank
yeah.
and his side, how quickly he's settled in, you're right. All of a sudden, that does become to top four. But the only thing I do get concerned about is, like, we're third right now. If we're there we're not going to be because our run's tough. But let's say we're there from now till Christmas or the next
Mm.
international break, even, which is what about. I think it's
It's after
November
March, I
time.
don't think. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. So if we, in November, let's say, going into that next international break, which is about 23, 24 days' time, we find ourselves third, and all of a sudden fans start going, oh, anything other than that is a drop off or it's a collapse, it's, a disaster. But you forget because you've overachieved. You can relate, I'm sure, in the case of Villa, that, you've got to sometimes look at the bigger picture and go, would we have taken this at the start of the season for a ball was kicked? We would have. That's the thing. You get carried away in the moment.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Mm.
like Spurs are what, your win off top. You're 14 points, top of 16.
Yeah.
Solid form for Spurs will keep them in that. Like when Villa finished in the top four under Emery, it was we put in Trojan work at the start of the year, and then we went through this situation whereby we beat Man City. Leon Bailey deflected goal. I remember, and then 3 days later we had to play Arsenal. I was like, right, brilliant, we got 3 points. So to settle for 2 draws, we've got 3 points. We can lose to Arsenal. Then we go and we beat Arsenal. We have 6 points from those two. And I remember it was November, December time, and I was like, my God. And then we went out against Sheffield United, win takes us top of the league for Christmas, and it all runs down the leg of our pants. Cameron Archer, our former player, scored against us, and we needed a last minute goal to come back and draw against Sheffield United. That was a sliding doors moment for Aston Villa. But the big thing here is for Spurs is build your points. I think they will do this. They'll build their points early within the Premier League, and like Villa coasted in the second half of the year because of injuries and stuff like that. We were sometimes we were like, we're going to mess this up. We got that fourth position, and I think Thomas Frank will look at that and go, back-to-back years back in the Champions League again is the positive here, and if you can throw in a League Cup, well then so be it, or an FA Cup as well, so be it. But I think back-to-back financially, even though you guys don't have to worry about that, it's about being at the top table in Europe, I think, for Spurs at the moment,
Yeah,
and for
I
Villa,
agree with that.
and for Villa.
Yeah, absolutely. But for Spurs, the only worry is for me is that I think we've had our easy fixtures. Not no, fixture of course is easy in the Premier League, but our easier run, that's what we had to start the season till now, the international break. But it gets a lot harder. The next we've got 7 games in 20 days, and they're like, I think Everton, Chelsea, Manchester United, Newcastle in the cup, Monaco. They're all these, tougher games. It starts, of course, with Villa
And
this
you
weekend.
guys, I think, have to go up to the Arctic Circle as well to play Bodo Glimt. I think you have to go up there too, which is never easy.
Yeah,
Oh no,
exactly.
sorry, you
So
guys have been there, haven't you? You guys have been there
we
already. Sorry, no, you've
we
been there.
have, yes, all right. We still have to go to Monaco. So I'll tell you what, I'll read out the run here. So next ever Tottenham, it's Villa at home, Monaco away, Everton away, Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Copenhagen at home, United at home. That takes into the next international break. It is 7 games in 20 days for Tottenham.
And then you've got
So
Arsenal and PSV then on the back of that, or PSG on the back of that then as well. Yeah, so
yeah,
it's a busy couple of months. It's a busy 6 weeks for you guys. Yeah.
it is. But how far do you think Spurs will get in the Champions League then? 4 points from 2 games so
Oh,
far.
Spurs should be looking like if Villa can get to a quarterfinal, any team can get to a quarterfinal. Any team that under Thomas Frank should be looking quarterfinal minimum, absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Like the way that I'm a huge fan of the new Champions League format because it can massively open up. All you need is a Man City to lose a game and draw a game, and before you know it, they're finishing seventh in the league, and they get a different. Their pathway is completely altered. Um, I would say a quarterfinals minimum for Spurs. Yeah, absolute minimum. I think you guys should make that. I think the English teams. I think all English teams should be looking at quarterfinals, semifinals, even. I know they can't all get into the semifinals, but the strength of the Premier League is immense. It's incredible. Outside of like 5 teams in Europe, every team should be beaten by a Premier League team. So I would be saying definitely quarterfinals, absolute minimum for Spurs.
Okay. Thank
And
you. I
that's
hope
not
you.
I didn't mean to sound cocky there with the Premier League side, Premier League stuff there as well. But yeah, I think it's definitely attainable. Definitely
Hmm.
semi-finals. Like Villa nearly got into a Champions League semi-final last year. It's doable if the league opens up for you. Like bar facing
Hmm.
PSG, I think we would have gone and the way that we were so resolute in the Champions League last year after beating Bayern Munich, we should have beaten Juventus. Yes, we lost to Monaco, but we were a very resolute team. I think over 2 legs we would have beaten outside of Liverpool and maybe Liverpool, Man City, PSG. I think we would have had a crack off a good few teams, and I even put Real Madrid in that. I think Villa were just so hard to beat in the Champions League against teams last year that it was you can go on those runs. I think Spurs can do that too, for sure. Spurs can do
Hmm.
that.
That's the aim. Thank you. I appreciate your optimism. It's refreshing to hear coming from someone that's not a Spurs fan. But let's shift to Aston Villa then. Where do you think, firstly, hand on heart, you'll finish in the Premier League?
Um, this is tough. I think Villa will. I think there will be a meeting in January where Villa will reassess. I think Villa are more or less qualified now. Well, I won't say more or less qualified. They have 6 points. They've got two of their harder games out of the way. They've got Fenerbahce to come, but that's not till later in the Europa League. I think what Villa will do is, if Villa can win their next 2 Europa League games, we've got a tough run, yes, coming up, but we've also got a tough run over Christmas. If Villa can be within touching distance of 7th coming into Christmas, I think Villa will reevaluate and they'll go, all right, yeah, we're gonna plow ahead in the league here, and we're gonna look to see if we can. Sorry, I mean Villa are in touching distance of 5th. Sorry, should I say? Um, I think Villa will plow ahead with the league, but they've got 2 shots. The aim for Villa is Champions League this year. You've got the shot of, yes, we can get it on merit via points, and we can build a buffer zone, and we can know where we can drop points or not, or we can have the more Russian roulette side of things with going through the Europa League. But that's what it is for Villa. Villa would be. I think Unai Emery would be as happy finishing 10th or 11th and winning the Europa League if that gets them into Champions League, because we've seen Spurs do it, and and that's where it is. Villa's financial woes get fixed by winning the Europa League this year and getting into Champions League next year. That's the woes over. That's financial worry gone. And that's the way Villa should be thinking. I think they are thinking, and but to say where we finish in the league is difficult now, because I think you'll reevaluate your plans in January to see whether it's worth going gung ho in the league, if the Europa League is opening up for you.
If I had to be difficult and say you had to commit to a place in the Premier League, I
I'll
totally
say
agree it's difficult.
Yeah, I'll say Villa should finish. No, I think Villa. I still, even now, would be disappointed if Villa didn't finish in the European places. So we're talking top 7.
Okay,
I
that's fair
think we
enough.
should. I think our pedigree
Yeah.
has us that we should be there.
So Europa League, of course, I know the aim will be to win it. Do you think you will?
Yes. Why not? I said football's all about. I've been an hour and 11 minutes here talking about football's all about fun, about looking for positives and through the cracks of normal life. Yeah, as I say, if Villa win it, I'll be calling in sick the day afterwards. I'll be in Birmingham for the open top bus parade. Beck and I might even be in the stadium for the final. Who knows? But it would mean an awful lot of cups of tea being thrown at me when I come back. But either way, it will happen. And as you say, I spoke about being there when the Europa League, or when the European Cup was paraded around Villa Park in the 25-year anniversary. I'd like to be there when it's paraded on the 1-day anniversary or the 1-minute anniversary of winning it. So yeah, that's what it's about. It's about winning stuff. So yeah, Villa are going to win it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Go throw my pragmatism to the wind and say Villa are going to win it.
Love that optimism. I hope you do. But that kind of wraps us up nicely. Neil, thank you so much. I always enjoy the opposition previews. This has been one of my favourites, if not my favourite one so far of the season. So thank you so much. Remind people where they can follow you across social media.
Yeah, you can find me at Love McGrath Podcast. The beauty of having a podcast named after Paul McGrath is if you type in for the love of Paul McGrath, there's only one of us. So you'll find us there. And look, it's interesting because a couple of opposition fans will come and look at some of the scouting things. They'll stumble across it and say, "Oh, this guy's after doing a scouting series on a player. We've signed him." Obviously, it'll be heavily kind of like based on what would he look like for Aston Villa, or where would he fit in with Villa's team and stuff like that. But there's stuff that you can still garner from it as well. I spend way too much time watching football and clips of players. So yeah, if you like scouting players and stuff like that, and you're just interested in watching stuff about football, you'll still find something on our channel too. That's called For the Love of Paul McGrath. And as I say, if you type that in anywhere, we're the only ones, thankfully.
Sounds great. Go follow Neil. Go check out his podcast. Sounds great. And I wish you all the best and Aston Villa for the rest of the season. After Sunday,
Thanks,
though.
After, yeah. Thanks very much, Aid. Thanks for
thank you so much. And guys, you know who I am. Harry Scarfe. You can follow me at Harry Scarfe too across all socials, football content creator, YouTuber. But also in terms of the podcast, you've got on audio, so across your all podcast platforms. I only talk really about the major podcast platforms, but it can be found pretty much anywhere, wherever you get your podcasts. So if you're listening there, please drop us a follow and a 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. But come on, you Spurs, enjoy the game. So glad the international break is over.